All right, tonight we'll pick back up in the book of Mark in chapter 6. Verse 1 says, "And he went out from thence and came into his own country, and his disciples follow him." Okay, where are they at? Okay, just making sure everybody knew where Jesus was at. "And when the Sabbath day was come, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many hearing him were astonished, saying, From whence hath this man these things? And what wisdom is this which is given unto him, that even such mighty works are wrought by his hands?" All right, he's amazing them. Not only with his ability to heal, but with his ability to teach. How does this man have all of this? "Is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joses, and of Judah and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And they were offended at him. We're about to strike 7 now, aren't we? And he's offended them. Who in the right mind give the carpenter authority to come into the synagogue and teach? You see what they did? They belittled him by asking, "Is this not the father? Is this not the carpenter?" What is he doing here? How does he know this stuff? "And Jesus said unto them, A prophet is not without honor, but in his own country, and among his own kin, and in his own house." So he's questioning them. Don't y'all know who I am? Why don't I have any honor here? And he could there do no mighty work. Did he go back to building stuff as a carpenter? Why was the ability for him to do miracles taken away?
Was it really taken away, or just because the people wouldn't believe?
Well, it was taken away because of the power was still in him.
Right.
But if Jesus comes in here and he still has the same power, but Mark don't believe he can be healed,
Right.
then the power is useless because of the unbelief. That's what's happened here. There was so much unbelief. They already questioned who he was and referred to him as the carpenter. There's no way he can be the Son of God, except that he laid his hands upon a few sick folk and healed them. So I imagine these people came to Jesus and said, "Look, we know who you are. We believe. We're in bad shape. Can you heal us?" And he marveled because of their unbelief. There's your answer right there. He marveled because of their unbelief. And he ran around about the villages teaching. So how hard do you think it must have been for him? It had to be kind of tough, because before these people, he came in and was performing miracles, and then the big crowd followed him. And he's still performing these miracles. They're actually seeing what's going on and they're believing. But now he's not in a healing environment. He's in a teaching environment. And they know who he is. He's back in his own country. They know who he is.
Yeah.
And they're questioning it, so there's no belief there. So now it's harder for him. Before, all he had to do was just speak because of what's happened and what they have seen. But these people in Nazareth, all they've seen him do is build a couple tables and stuff. That's all they know him as. So, and he's amazed at their unbelief, but he still went around about teaching. "And he called unto him the 12, and began to send them forth 2 by 2, and gave them power over unclean spirits." So now they had the ability to cast out the demons. "And commanded them that they should take nothing for their journey, save a staff only, no scrip, no bread, no money in their purse." So all they're taking is a staff. They're going out 2 by 2, so they have 2 staffs and the clothes just on their back. Nothing else with them. They have sandals on, but only 1 coat. You see it. It says don't put on 2 coats. I rode in this afternoon. I had on 2 coats. It was warm, but I know it's going to get cold. I was prepared. I just texted Crystal a few minutes ago, bring me my other jacket, because I know when I go home it's going to be really cold. So, what's happened here? I think he's teaching them to trust. Teaching them that he's going to provide for them. I don't know if it was me, I'd probably be trying to sneak some stuff. we got to take some food. And I know Mark would. Mark's like, Vicky, make me a couple of sandwiches. Jesus is sending me out. I don't know how long we're going to be. Make me a few sandwiches. But he tells them, don't take anything, not even money. I try not to leave the house with no money at all. I try to always have a few dollars on me just in case something happens. Yeah. But here they're going with nothing but a staff. And he said unto them, in what place soever you enter in to a house, there abide till you depart from that place. And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear you, when you depart, thence shake off the dust under your feet for a testimony against them. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of the judgment than for that city. All right, so he's basically just told them that he is going to prepare the way. That they will come into some obstacles. And when they go to a house, to stay there. Abide there, live there. And when you go to a house, it's a lot different than it back then than it is now. If I go, well, I've never been inside Mark's house. I've never been inside Kay's house. So I'd feel kind of weird to just walk into their houses and say, what you got in the refrigerator? I'd be kind of weird. Now, I've been inside Peggy's and they told me to make myself at home. Michael, I've eaten a bunch of food at Michael's house. I'd feel at home. And Grace, just right in there, go get it. I'd feel comfortable because I've been in those places. But these guys have never been there. But Jesus is telling them, go in and make yourself at home, live there. It's like it's your house. So whatever they have is there. And that's the custom that was done there. When someone came in, when they brought someone into the home, they were treated like family. Their servant came and served them, washed their feet at the door, and they came in and whatever was in the house was theirs. And Jesus told them to stay there. But there will be some that won't receive you. There will be some that say, I don't know who you are. Are you guys a staff? What are you going to do? Beat me up? They don't want to hear it. They don't want to see you. It says, leave from there and shake off the dust. Leave it a marker. Mark that territory as unbelief, as in unbelieving. And look what he says the punishment will be. It'll be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, you know how they were destroyed, by hellfire and brimstone, right? That was an easier judgment, is what he's saying, than what will happen to these people that ultimately deny the Word of God. That's what's going on here. And look, he says in verse 12, and they went out and preached that men should repent. And they cast out many devils and anointed with oil many that were sick and healed them. All right, so Jesus has just extended his power to his disciples. That same power that he gave them, I believe, is still available for us today. But there's such a great unbelief, and there was such a great movement of people who were pretending or doing it to try to get rich, that it's kind of become a joke. It's kind of comical. But I believe, I've seen it myself, I believe that the ability is still there for God's children to cast out demons and to anoint and pray over those that are sick. The healing does not occur by anybody's hands. It's by belief of the prayer and the one being prayed over. That's where the healing comes from, from belief. So the disciples are out. They're making some forward progress. They're casting out devils. They're healing the sick. And here we go. Strike 7 or 8. And King Herod heard of him, for his name was spread abroad, and he said that John the Baptist was risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. Others said that is Elijah, and others said that it's a prophet, or as one of the prophets. But when Herod heard thereof, he said, it is John, whom I beheaded. He is risen from the dead. Okay, they don't know who Jesus is. And they're trying to say it's this guy, it's this guy, it's this guy. And Herod says, oh, this is John the Baptist. I beheaded him, and he's raised from the dead. For Herod himself sent forth and laid hold upon John, bound him in prison for Herodias' sake, for his brother's Philip's wife, for he had married her. For John had said unto Herod, It is not lawful for thee to have thy brother's wife. You see what he's done there? John's just called him out on his sin. Not anything that Jesus is teaching. This is Old Testament stuff that John just brought to light here. Therefore, Herodias had a quarrel against him and would have killed him, but she could not. For Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just man and a holy, and observed him. And when he heard him, he did many things and heard him gladly. And when a convenient day was come, that Herod, on his birthday, made a supper to his lords, high captains and chief estates of Galilee, and when the daughter of the said Herodias came in and danced and pleased Herod, and them that sat with them, the king said unto the damsel, Ask of me whatsoever thou wilt, and I will give thee. So they're having a birthday party. Now, this is Herod's birthday party. It's probably a big to-do. They're probably drinking, having a good time. He's brought in all the chief leaders. They're all at this table having a good time, and they bring in this daughter. She's dancing, and we can leave that for imagination. I don't know exactly what kind of dancing she's doing, but they were very happy with it, to as much so he says, Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. And he swore unto her, Whatsoever thou ask of me, I will give it to thee, unto half of the kingdom. So whatever she wants, up to half of his kingdom, she can have it. What kind of dancing was she doing? I mean, we think that stuff didn't happen back then, but
Yeah, it did.
there you go, right there. That's what was going on.
Yeah.
And she went forth and asked, and said unto her mother, What shall I ask? And she said, The head of John the Baptist. Now, her mother was the one that got into the argument with John over about who she should marry. And it said that she would have killed him, but she wasn't able. She wasn't strong enough. So now the opportunity has arisen for her to get what she wants. Now, instead of asking for anything else, remember, half the kingdom could have been theirs. The only thing she asked for was the head of John the Baptist. Why? Because he called her out on her sin. And she came in straightway with haste. So she hurried back to the king and asked, saying, I want you, and this, the King James says, I will that thou give me by and by in a charger the head of John the Baptist. She wants John the Baptist's head on a platter, is what she just said. You told me I could have whatever I want. This is what I want. Now remember, the king, verse 20, the king feared John. Remember? Why? Because he knew he was a just and holy man. And he observed him. He watched him and listened to him when he spoke. And did many things and received what John was teaching gladly. So now Herod's he's kind of in a pickle. What does he do? Well, we know what he does, but could you imagine the situation that he's in? He respects and knows that John the Baptist is working for the Lord. But now he's made this proclamation in front of not just the little girl, but everybody that was at that party. So now he's obligated. So if he was to back out on that or tell her she could have anything else, what would that do to his control over the kingdom? So it says he was exceeding sorry. He was upset. Yet for his oath's sake, because he made a promise, and for their sakes which sat with him, he would not reject her. There was a lot on the line here. Not only was John the Baptist's head on the line, but so was the reputation and the leadership of Herod by making this public oath. And immediately the king sent an executioner and commanded his head to be brought. and he went and beheaded him in the prison. So, just like that, now we see where John was at, right? He was in jail.
It's locked up.
It wasn't hard to find, but Herod himself didn't even go do it. He sent an executioner. He sent somebody to do it for him. And beheaded him into prison, and brought his head in a charger, or in a box, in a case, and gave it to the damsel. And the damsel gave it to her mother. That's pretty gruesome, isn't it? Now, if that come across the news today, we'd all be shocked. Even as much violence as there's out in the world today, we would be shocked. But this is in Scripture. God wrote this for a reason. What reason was it?
Let you know how much pressure Jesus was in while he was here on earth.
Okay, Norman's got a point there. You see what he said? He said that this shows us, one, how much pressure Jesus was under every time he taught. Because every time he taught, he was preaching the gospel. And when the gospel is preached, it requires us to investigate ourselves. That's what happened here when John told her that she can't marry this guy. It's unlawful. She had to investigate what she was doing, and she saw that it was wrong, but she still wanted to do it. So persecution came. She was persecuted by her sin, but because she didn't want to give in to her sin, or she didn't want to give in to that persecution, she said, I got to stop it. And that's what the world is doing today. And the further we move along, the more prevalent it's going to be. Now, America, we don't have beheadings yet, but go to China. Go to China with a King James or with a Bible and watch and see.
That's what's happening in Iran.
In Iran, too.
They're having them turn to the Lord by groups.
Look, and what's going to happen to them? That's not accepted over there.
No, it's not.
It's not. So those people, most of those people will die as martyrs. I mean, they'll be given a choice to either reject or die. And if there's been a true conversion, the majority of them will die. So John's in prison for what? For preaching the gospel. John's fixing to lose his head for what? For preaching the gospel. And she had her daughter do her bidding. Instead of getting right and realizing that her life was full of sin, she had her daughter do her bidding. Don't know how old the young girl is. Excuse me, but she brought this head to her mother. Could you imagine the joy that Herodias had? She had to be excited and happy because now the one who called her out on it is dead. So now she can carry on and do whatever she wanted to do. And when the disciples heard of it, they came and took his corpse and laid it in a tomb. Now, they weren't supposed to do that. They weren't supposed to touch that body. According to Jewish tradition, they weren't supposed to touch that body. But they did. Why? Because that was their brother. They needed proper burial. Could you imagine the anger? Now, Jesus knew that this was coming, that this was going to happen. But could you imagine the anger that the disciples must have had? They had to be heartbroken and shocked. But now they're having to bury this headless body of someone that was in the ministry with them. And knowing Peter had to be pretty upset. And it just stops there. So they laid him in the tomb. And the apostles gathered themselves together unto Jesus and told him all things, both of what they had done and what they had taught. So they come back and give him a progress report. And he said unto them, Come ye yourselves apart into a desert place and rest for a while. So he's going to give them a little break. He's going to break up the duos. He says, Come ye yourselves, break away, and go and rest. Why do you think he did that? I think he sent them out 2 by 2 for strength, for comfort, for witness. But now they've been, we don't know how long it's been, but they've been with each other for a while. They've experienced all this. They just need a break. I love to be at home with my family, but every now and then, yesterday, we spent all day together yesterday. I just need a little break. Not that I don't love them, but I was just overwhelmed by, I just need a little break. And maybe Jesus understood that they needed a little break, somewhere they could be alone, they could pray alone. I'm not saying that they hadn't prayed their whole journey, I'm sure they had, but maybe just a place where they could refresh by themselves. For there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so as much to eat. And they departed into a desert place by ship privately. And the people saw them departing, and many knew him, and ran afoot thither out until all the cities, and outwent them, and came together unto him. And Jesus, when he came out, saw much people, and was moved with the compassion toward them, because they were as sheep not having a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when the day was now far spent, his disciples came unto him and said, This is a desert place, and now the time is far past. Okay, they're saying that because there's nothing here. There's all these people here. It's getting late in the day. What are we going to do? Send them away that they may go into the country round about and into the villages and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat. Okay, so the disciples are kind of looking at the situation and hey, Jesus has been preaching a long time. Days wasting away and there's nothing here. Speedway's closed. Southern Chicken ain't open on Sundays. What are we going to do? The disciples said, Send them away because they have nothing to eat. And he answered and said, Give ye them to eat. And he said unto him, Shall we go and buy 200 pennyworth of bread, and give it to them to eat? And he saith unto them, How many loaves have ye? Go and see. And when they knew, they say, 5 and 2 fishes. All right, now you see what's happened here. We know the other gospel writers' account of this story. There's a little boy that's got 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Mark just says all we could round up was 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Why do you think he left out the part about the boy?
Was it important?
I don't think it was important in Mark's perspective of what's going on. Now
We
Luke,
notice that Mark doesn't give full details.
yeah, I think Mark is just giving his. Now I believe that every bit of this is God breathed, but I also believe that God uses the personality of the writer to tell the story. Mark just giving a snapshot of what he saw, and giving us the meat of it, if you will, without a whole lot of description. But we know that there was one boy that had 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And he commanded...
I was just going to say, the little boy may have been on the other side of wherever he was.
And Mark didn't see it. Maybe Mark was out looking around, came back and didn't have anything, and they had already had the 5 loaves and 2 fishes up there. We don't know. But this was Mark's account, and God authorized Mark's writing of this account, so we know that it's accurate.
Yes.
And he commanded them to make them all sit down by companies upon the green grass. And they sat down in ranks by hundreds and fifties. I'm imagining, I just saw military when I read that, of how they were in file, hundreds by fifties. So there's a lot of people here. There's 5,000 people here. men. We don't know how many women and children are here, but there's at least 5,000 men here. And when he had taken the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and this is not some big wahoo tuna either. I read some, and some say it's about the size of a sardine.
It was a little boy's lunch.
Yeah,
so it
it's,
couldn't have been
yeah,
huge.
it's not very big. So, and the loaf of bread is not like an Italian long piece of bread. Even still, you couldn't feed 5,000 people with 1 or 2 of those long loaves. But here's what happened. He looked up to heaven and blessed it and brake the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before them. And the 2 fishes divided he among them all. Now we know by reading Luke's account that there was some questions. The disciples had some questions. How are we going to feed all of these people? There's no way we can feed 5,000 people with just this little bit. But what multiplied it was when he
Each
looked
one
up.
had a basket.
Hey, there's going to be leftovers. It says, and they all did eat, and they were filled. It just wasn't like an appetizer. You know how you go when you get an appetizer and there's like 4 or 5 pieces of whatever on there? It wasn't like that. That was just, the appetizer was just to kickstart your stomach so you can get ready for the main course. But it says, and they were all, and were filled. And they, being disciples, took up 12 baskets full of the fragments and the fishes. And they that did eat of the loaves were about 5,000 men. Now, just so happened there was 12 baskets full left over, you think? Remember, he told them to leave and not take anything with them. Now, we know we're read in there that they ever had need for food. Did we ever see that? Then Mark, I think Mark would have mentioned it if they ever come across a place that they hadn't eaten in a few days. But we don't read that. So now I think God's just adding the exclamation point to his provision for the disciples. Yes, those 5,000 plus people were amazed. They had to be amazed and astonished. But now he's just putting that exclamation point on it for the disciples. Because we know that Luke said, in Luke, there's questions there how this is going to be enough. But just so happened, there was 12 baskets. Not 9, not 10, not 11, but 12. Why 12? Because there was 12 disciples. There was a basket for each one of them to take. That's crazy, isn't it? That's how God multiplies things. And straightway, he constrained his disciples to get into the ship and go to the other side before Bethsaida while he sent away the people. So he put all the disciples in the boat. It's kind of like the preacher at the door after church is over. All the disciples is in the boat and he's shaking hands and letting everybody go, telling everybody to go. And when he had sent them away, he departed into a mountain to pray. Okay, so he's got the disciples in the boat. He said his last greetings or goodbyes to everybody that was in the congregation. The disciples pushed off. They didn't get in. Jesus didn't get in the boat with them. The disciples have already got to be nervous. Where's he going? We've been with him for this long, and he's going to leave us. Where's he going? But he went up into the mountain to pray. And when evening was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. So there's a separation between Jesus and the disciples. And he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary to them. The wind was fighting them. Whatever they tried, the wind was fighting them. And about the 4th watch of the night, he cometh unto them, walking upon the sea, and would have passed by them. He was just going to walk right by them. You see that, right? Where was he going? He was going to meet them where he told them he was going to meet them. That was his last instruction. What was it? What did he say? Get in the ship and go to the other side. That was their marching orders. That was their job to do, was just get in the boat and go to the other side. He went and prayed and was going to meet them on the other side. Because he's Jesus, he can walk on the water. He didn't have to go the long way around. He was just going to meet them over there. And it says, they toiled all night, and he's walking on the water, and would have passed them by. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit or a ghost, and cried out. Now, they just saw him feed 5,000 plus. They just saw him perform all these miracles. They were just present when he gave them the power to do all these things that he's doing. But yet when they see him walking on the water, they think he's a ghost. They don't recognize who he is, and they cried out. For they all saw him and were troubled. And immediately he talked with them and said unto them, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. Do you think maybe they had gotten a little bit delirious? The wind, they were fighting this wind all night long. They'd row a little bit and get pushed back. They'd row a little bit and get pushed back. It feels like they ain't making no progress. It's late. They're tired. They probably fighting over a little piece of fish in somebody's basket. I don't know. But there's a lot going on here. And they see him, and they don't recognize him. We can jump in that boat with them too, because sometimes we get so delirious in the things that are going on around us that we don't recognize that God's still there and God's still at work. But look what he says. He spoke with them and said, Don't worry, or be of good cheer. It's me. It's the same guy who just pushed you off the shore. It's me. Be not afraid. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure, and wondered, for they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. Now, Mark left a whole bunch out here, didn't he?
Yeah.
Isn't this where Peter gets out and walks on the water with Jesus?
Yeah.
Why didn't Mark put that there? This ain't a Carnival Cruise Line ship that they're on. This is a rowboat, okay? Why do you think Mark left that out? You think Mark might have been jealous that he called Peter out onto the water?
Well, I think it won't be important tomorrow.
It would, no, I don't think it. Now, if he had called Mark out onto the water, Mark would have been like, and then the Lord called me out onto the water, and I walked with him. I think Mark learned his lesson by watching what Peter did and didn't feel it necessary. Because look, it says, for their heart was hardened. What happened? What happened if we experienced that type of miracle? It wasn't a healing, but it was a multiplication of something.
Sound like it's not some friction going on, don't it?
Now, think about this. If there's 12 of us in a boat, it's a small boat. This wind is blowing us everywhere. The waves got to be crashing. We're soaking wet. We've been rowing all night. Any little thing is going to set us off. Now, they should be fully excited and ecstatic about what they just witnessed. Right? Wouldn't you be?
Yes.
But something changed.
Do you
What
think
happened?
the storm made them forget about all the other stuff that they?
I think they got trapped back into themselves and then forgetting of what.
There was more, thinking more about saving themselves
I think, yes.
than all the things that they had watched and seen God do.
Maybe they
Jesus
felt
do.
their life was threatened. Maybe they felt abandoned because Jesus wasn't in the boat with them. This is one of the first times that he separated himself from them. Maybe they felt abandoned. I don't know. Maybe there was a whole lot going on that led up for them to have hardened their hearts. So they didn't even think about it. I think the devil was present too. Could you imagine him sitting on the front of that ship, whispering in your ear? Where's he at now? He just fed these 5,000 people because they were hungry, and here you are about to drown. In the sea, in the middle of the sea, he sent you on. Where's your God at now? Don't worry about that 5,000 he fed. He's not even worried about you. Don't, just forget about that. Those things are over. And they listened because they felt threatened. Their life felt threatened by the storm that was around them, and they hardened their hearts against God. And when they had passed over, they came into the land of Gennesaret and drew unto the shore. And when they were come out of the ship, straightway they knew him. They knew him. And ran through that whole region round about and began to carry about in their beds those that were sick where they heard he was. All right, so he's gone right back in. He hadn't skipped a beat. Whatever took place on that mountain when he went and prayed, he come back down, got his disciples back in line, and he's went right back to the ministry. So they're going through the whole region, and all around, people begin to carry those that are sick in their beds to him. And whithersoever he entered into villages or cities or country, they laid the sick in the street and besought him that they might touch, if it were but the border. Listen, did you hear that?
Yes.
If it was but the border of his garment, and as many as touched him were made whole. Where in the world do you think they heard, if we could just touch the border or the hem of his garment? We just read that last week, did we not?
About the lady.
Do you think it's made its way to where he's at?
Yes.
Do you think the gospel is spreading rapidly?
Yes.
Now that's just,
It has to, for them to know to do that.
yeah. Where did that lady get the idea from? The woman with the issue of blood. She felt it in her heart. She knew. But these people, that was the first time it happened. But now these people have heard the result of the virtue that's just in the very clothing that Jesus wore, that all they want to do now is just touch the hem or the border of his garment. So these people that are witnessing what Jesus is doing is going back and sharing that with everybody. I don't know how far the journey is, but it's made it from wherever in that town court, that marketplace, where Jesus was touched by that woman with the issue of blood. It has made it all the way over here to Gennesaret. And these people are just begging that they might touch his garment. And as many that touched him, so it's saying whoever believed and touched him, they were made whole. So you see the importance of sharing the good news. It's very important. They didn't have internet and pigeons flying messages everywhere. This word of what Jesus was doing was going mouth to mouth and door to door, sharing everything that had happened. And it made such an impact that when he got to this land, that's not the only thing. Remember the guy that was sick with the palsy that was born that was carried by 4? What was he carried in? He was carried in his bed, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And they lowered him down through the roof, right? Well, look here. That's what they're doing here too. They're picking these people up in their beds and taking them to Jesus. The method to get to the Master is being spread everywhere, and it's working. Why is it not working today?
Unbelief.
And I believe it's on both parts. On the lost world, and unbelief of the church. The church, some of the church doesn't believe that it's their responsibility to share the gospel. But we see the benefit of doing it. That's why we have that right here. It doesn't, it's going to sound crazy, but it doesn't matter how many people were healed right here. But what matters is the testimony that has been carried from that woman in the marketplace all the way over here. It prepared these people for the presence of Jesus. And when they saw him, they knew who he was and they just begged. Why? Because they had heard it had happened before. That wraps up chapter 6, and I won't start chapter 7. It's like 10 till now. Any questions on chapter 6? Any thoughts?
They didn't have no belief when they got on the water.
Isn't that crazy?
And when they on land, they had all the beliefs they wanted to, but every time they get on the water, it's kind of like me, when I get on the water, I'm getting scared. So, I mean, the disciples were the same way.
I know, and it's crazy because how many fishermen are with them? People with seagoing
That's
experience.
their living, so.
Yeah.
You have to remember too, this is all around the Sea of Galilee.
Yep. Now that the way that sea is, it's surrounded by mountains.
Now,
And that wind can come up at any time. And we don't know how strong that wind was. I can understand, we just questioned the fishermen, but maybe from experience they know how bad those storms can get. Because they have made it through some already. And they just know what might lie ahead. And maybe that in the back of their mind has come back up and said, you know what, this storm is going to be bad. This is not a favorable wind for us to get to the other side. We're going to sink right here. Because they had that experience.
Probably have known people that have died in those storms.
Exactly. Exactly. So we can kind of understand what they're going through. Even though they just saw the miracle,
Yeah.
that took faith to believe that miracle. But what they've seen in the past in their seagoing adventures, they've seen those storms. They know how bad they can get. And they're scared.
But Jesus calmed them on that other one.
Yeah, and he's had to calm them again here too.
Well, if they were with him and they calmed them on that one, then they shouldn't have been afraid on this one.
They shouldn't have been, but that just shows their human nature.
They still had doubt.
Exactly. How many times have we been there? God's brought us through something, and it may not be exactly the same, but we find ourselves back in that same position, and we find ourselves afraid of the outcome of whatever may happen. When he's already brought us through something like that one time. But because it's right here and we can see it and we're actually going through it, we forget. And no fault of the disciples, because we could have been either one of those in the boat. We probably have been in that boat before. That's what's going on here. And look, he didn't condemn them. What did he do? He tried to calm them. Just calm down. It's okay. I got this. It's me. I'm always right here. So we beat up on the disciples a little bit, but quite honestly, we've been there ourselves. Maybe not in a sinking boat, but in a sinking relationship, and a sinking financial situation, and just something that we've been brought through before. But because it's current and it's happening right now, we forget what's happened in the past. Any other questions?
We just have to remind ourselves, we gotta put our faith and trust in the Lord to get us through this again, you know.
Again,
He's brought us through it before, he'll surely bring us through again.
I think faith is something.
That's not our picture that we give off to others, because we have doubts.
Exactly.
Even if it was day before yesterday that he went through life with us and showed us a miracle. When we get to the other side, we still have doubt.
Yep.
Just like these disciples.
Exactly.
We are all natured alike.
Exactly. And why is that? Why can't that change? And I believe all that comes from free will. God gave us the ability to choose on our own. And in choosing, in doing that, we have the ability to choose him and to completely believe in him. Or we have the ability to choose him and just pick and choose what we believe is going to happen. Faith is something that we have to exercise and use every day. And I've said it before, and I think that faith is a muscle that we have to exercise. If I lay in a bed for 6 months and don't move, my muscles are going to die. Faith is the same way. If I don't get up each morning and exercise my faith, it's going to diminish. And then I'll find myself afraid when the storm does come, because I don't have that faith net to fall back onto because I haven't used it. I think that's what he's trying to teach us here. And I'm glad that he used the disciples. That he just didn't use some of these people that were just healed, because that would truly be understandable. But here he's handpicked these 12. These should be cream of the crop.
These are followers of him.
Yeah.
And in our eyes, sometimes maybe we should think they should be absolutely perfect.
Perfect. Yes.
And not ever do anything wrong, not ever have any doubts, not ever lose their faith.
That's
They
exactly
do.
what I was getting at.
But they do.
That we do that. We think that these 12 men are supposed to be perfect. And I think that's why he let us have these stories. Because these 12 men weren't perfect. They were no different than you and I. Look who he chose. He didn't choose the perfect in society. He chose those ones that nobody really got along with. And we see how their life is. He's given them the power. And even though they've performed miracles themselves, we forgot that. Here they are in the boat scared. So we are normal when that happens. We just don't have to continue on.
You just need to step back and say, okay, God, I gotta put my faith and trust back in you.
Yeah, look past the wind and
Don't get
waves and say,
scared.
I know you're out there.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid. I know you're out there. Come bail me out.